Okay, it's good to be back. This is Mr. Red Fox, back from my lovely, lovely vacation. Um, I probably will not be doing a big New Year's cast, but I'll do something after New Year's, and we'll talk, hang out. Um, we'll be back into the swing of things next week with BS Busters coming out. Um, the 7th, and the Sci-Fi Power Hour coming the 6th. We'll be talking about movies, TV, video games, all that fun stuff on Saturday night, 7 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And BS Busters will be at its normal time of 7 to 8:30 p.m. EST. So without much ado, let's get to it. This is my Xenoblade Chronicles 2 review, and I put about 67 hours into this game, so I think, I'm only on chapter 5. There are 8 chapters in the game, but I think I've, or I think there's more than that, but I think I've gone far enough to give a somewhat credible review. So, here we go. Okay then, so here's my overview of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The game is a JRPG, the third game in the Xenoblade Chronicles series, which began with Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii, Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U, and now it's not a direct sequel, but more in line with Xenoblade Chronicles, the first game, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The overall story of this game is essentially that there's this world where some type of catastrophe happened in the past, and so now there is no land. Instead, you have these massive titans that people live on. They're massive creatures, if you will. People make war in this world with the utilization of these special of these beings called blades, which are basically come from these things called cores. Cores come from cores are a byproduct of when a titan dies, but that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the overall story. We'll begin with the story, and then we'll go to story. We'll do story and characters, and then we'll do gameplay mechanics, and then we'll do my overall thoughts about everything, and then we'll wrap things up after the cut. So, the overall story of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is that it's set in a world where, as I said, there was a catastrophe. There are no land masses anymore. Instead, people live on these giant titans. You discover more about that story through side quests and side missions in the game, and mercenary missions, but that's the general gist of what you need to know at that point. But it gets a little bit deeper. You see, there was a war 500 years earlier between where like two titans were destroyed, basically, just absolutely destroyed, when these two groups of blades were fighting against each other. And one of the titular blades was called the Aegis, which essentially your main character Rex wields the Aegis. So there you go, and it becomes this big quest to figure out what's going on, get to this tree in the middle of the world called Elysium, and generally find out what's going on. Now, there's a whole bunch of other shit going on. There's people doing nefarious deeds. There's an overall plot. It hasn't really opened up yet, but that's generally the gist of the game. One of the interesting things about the game is that in the first few minutes of the game, your character is stabbed from behind, like just straight on stabbed in the chest. It's kind of interesting, kind of difficult, but it's a very interesting story. I'm not saying it's the best RPG story I've seen. I personally liked the story from the first Xenoblade Chronicles a little bit better. But, you know, it is what it is. But overall, the game is very good. So, with that being said, let's move on to characters. The main character, Rex, isn't really all that impressive looking. He does have a character, though, which I'll readily admit he does have a character. Which is more than I can say of a lot of other games where the characters have no real character. It's like, they say something, it's like, I don't really care about this person because there's no, how can I put this? There's no relation to that side character. In this game, the side characters, you can sort of relate to the side characters. Maybe not perfectly, but kind of. With that being said, let's move on to the next portion, which is essentially the overall gameplay mechanics after the cut. Okay then, so one of the big things you'll see in this, you'll see in the reviews of this game is that the gameplay mechanics are really confusing. Not really. Okay, I know it seems like it would be, but it really isn't. The gameplay mechanics aren't confusing. They actually are relatively easy to understand. The problem, the reason people say that the gameplay mechanics in this game are confusing is because they don't really explain the gameplay mechanics very well. But basically, here's how it goes. Okay, you have an auto attack in the game that basically lets you, do damage to your enemies. Auto attacks are essentially build up a meter, which fills up your various special attacks, depending on what what blade you're using. So, let's say you're using a knuckle blade, or an axe blade, or a shield blade. Like whatever blade you're using, basically. How those abilities are utilized, as you do damage, as you do auto attack combos, it basically fills up the meter, which lets you use your special attacks. As you do your blade, your driver arts, like Rex's harpoon snag thing and all that jazz. These can do various special effects in combat. So you can, knock someone out. You can make them. You can do great damage to enemies. You can knock people out. I mean, it's really. I mean, it's not. People are saying this game is really hard, and the combat system is really confusing. Not really. I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's not like this, they would have you believe that it's just, oh man, this is so confusing. Not really. But basically, every action you do is building up on something else. So, you know, you do normal auto attack combos in order to defeat, in order to fill up your arts. You use your arts in order to fill up your special, which, depending on the element of your blade, that basically will, you know, trigger different effects. Now, here's the kicker, though. The more powerful your blade is, basically, the more you use your blade, you know, once you use your blade combo, you essentially get your hands on, you can initiate a driver combo. Now, this is basically what you do when you hit an enemy with an elemental attack. Your attacks go from, your special moves go from 1 to 5, or sorry, 1 to 4, with which each level is more powerful than the previous one. And that's pretty easy to understand. Now, here's where the kicker comes in. The more you use these abilities stack together, and they eventually, if 3 of them hit together, of consecutively more powerful, say, ability, what happens is that you essentially, at that point, level up your abilities, and which is what you're trying to do, and that's what you do in this game. Everything builds together. Now, once you get 4 hits in, you can then, and this is really important, once you get in 4 hits, you gain the ability to do one of my personal favorites, which is a driver combo. Now, if you do a driver combo of 3 consecutive hits, you create a sealing orb, which can seal an ability that enemy has. Like, let's say you can seal an enemy's ability to summon reinforcements. You can seal an enemy's ability to use their own sealing abilities. So there's really like a lot of really cool stuff going on in the game that really adds depth and complexity to it. And it's some people will say it's random. It's not. Basically, how you use these abilities, what elements you use in the driver combo determine what sealing or orb you'll get. Okay, pretty easy to understand. I don't think that's hard or difficult. But once you do get a sealing orb, you can go into your elemental combo, which basically is just like an overdrive type thing going on, where you hit an enemy with attacks, which can break that sealing orb and reset the combo, so to keep it going. So you can basically, the max number of orbs you can have around an enemy is 4, I think. And so you can just continuously break these by hitting that orb with its opposing element. So let's say it's a lightning orb, you hit it with earth attacks, it'll reset the combo so that you can keep it going, so that you can keep on attacking them. So, I mean, the game has some depth to it. This is not an RPG for dummies. Thank God, because, you know, I'm tired of people dumbing down games for the lowest common denominator. But with that being said, there are some downsides to that. These aren't really explained, right? It is not well explained, like how you utilize the special abilities in this game and what they are and how you use them. And that is a flaw of the title. That's a flaw. That's a game design thing. But with that being said, it is a good game. I've enjoyed it. Is it perfect? No, but perfection is overrated. So there we go with the gameplay and mechanics. So I'll give you my overall thoughts after the cut. So, I guess this is my overall conclusion. This game is a lot of fun. Is it perfect? No. The various features and special abilities are not well explained, so that kind of brings it down a little bit. Like, and it takes a while for the little special abilities and stuff in the game to be fully utilized, so that kind of is one of the downsides of the title, is that, like, you really legitimately, a lot of this is not explained early on in the game. So if you miss the explanation is half-assed, you can get lost. But I guess that's part of the fun of playing an RPG, is kind of figuring things out as you go along and not having your hand held all the time. I know that's a dirty word in today's gaming society, because everyone wants everything explained to them perfectly all the time, but sometimes it's not going to be like that. So with that being said, those are my thoughts about the overall game. I've been enjoying it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it is a fun game. The music isn't too memorable. I mean, it's you can listen to it, it gets the job done, but it's not memorable. For people who have never played this game, don't know what it is, I would essentially say that this game is essentially a love child. If you wanted to describe this game to people who've never played it, this game basically feels like a love child between Chrono Trigger, the Xenoblade games themselves, and Golden Sun. And hear me out before you say anything. The reason I say it's like Golden Sun is because the blades themselves are like the Jenny from Golden Sun, where essentially having them netted you various special abilities and the like, which could let you traverse the world and jump. That's very Golden Sun-esque. I'm not lying. The game is not like Golden Sun in that the game is like Chrono Trigger in that you have a 3-person party. Each character has their own distinct style of gameplay, etc., etc. And no two characters play exactly alike. Even characters who have similar weapons will play differently. There are characters who are more suited for healing, characters who are more suited for active defense. It's very, the game is just very well made. Very well made for an RPG, and I've been loving it very much. I have to say, if there's a downside about the game, it's that it does have a few issues, and that is essentially, like I said, they don't really explain a lot of the more advanced things, or they explain it once and it's like, well, if you missed it, you're on your own, buddy. Which kind of sucks if you want to enjoy the full experience of the game. But you can't expect perfection with these types of titles. So with that being said, that's my overall thoughts about the game, my overall conclusion, its various features, how it feels. Yeah. So enjoy, auf Wiedersehen, and good going. Okay, so like I said earlier in the video, didn't do a New Year's cast this year just because by the time I got home from my cruise, I was wiped the fuck out. I don't go back to work till January 15th, and let me tell you something, I'm going to need a break from my winter break. I'm gonna need a break from my cruise in order to recoup, and I look forward to it. So, in that regards, next week I'll be dropping some videos about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I'll also be doing a deeper review about tips and tricks videos about how to fight certain enemies and stuff like that, how to use certain abilities, stuff like that. So look forward to that. I also will be doing next week, our big video next week will be Saturday, Sci-Fi Power Hour. Our topic next week will be where does the DC Cinematic Universe go from here? Because clearly there's been a lot of fuck-ups going on. So where do they go from there? And we'll also be doing, talking about, it's the upcoming new year, what is Marvel going to do? We might talk about Star Wars too, but I don't feel comfortable always talking Star Wars. But whatever. So that'll be Saturday, 7 to 8 o'clock. So Sci-Fi Power Hour, just an hour. It's not going to be too long. And then, of course, Sunday is BS Busters. We will be talking about BS. Nothing but BS and BS. And, even in a new year, the BS never stops. There's always some BS that needs to be busted. Of course, we're going to be talking about things that we don't want to see in the new year that we probably will see anyway because no one can ever stop fucking bringing it up. We will also talk about other things as well. So look forward to that. That's what we're going on about. That's what we're going to be talking about. And that's it. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, leave them in the comment section. I think the week after that I'll be doing a Questionathon, so I'll probably drop a video every week, the week after next, collecting questions for the Questionathon. So with that being said, that's the end of this video. Enjoy, and that's it. Peace.